A lot of times I'm driving, there's nothing to do, and I shuffle through the radio before I unglue. There's a lot of red on ways, it's traffic, I'm screwed, and I'm wired a bit different than a regular dude. It's not a bad thing, I embrace it, it's true. The radio don't stimulate brain chemistry fluid. The Buddha found nirvana and the Four Noble Truths. Through a meditative process, right action he proved. For me, I require the use of a tool, a detector, pin, pointer, shovel, and beach scoop. I'm meant to work the dirt with my history crew, but everywhere I look, my interest taboo. Most people choose Bieber over Tippecanoe. What does a detectorist listen to when the radio is full of bad music and news? I need an alternative for me to peruse. Beyond Sight and Sound gets fantastic reviews. A metal detecting show where my thought bubble brews. Thank you, Josh Kimmel, for inviting me to a detecting dork out with guests like yours truly.
Are you looking for a high-quality beach and sand scoop? Are you trying to take your hunting to the extreme? How about an American-based company that stands behind their product and everything they sell? Then check out our friends over at XTREME Scoops. John has been making scoops for some time now and makes a quality beach and sand scoop to take your hunting to the next level. XTREME Scoops recently released their new sand shredder that works great in the water and on the beach. And if you're a new Equinox user, you may want to check out his Surfmaster X3 that can trap those small targets you new Equinox users are finding out there. XTREME Scoop's company approach is let's do it right. So do it right, buy it once, and go to the extreme. XTREMEScoops.com. That's XTREME scoops.com.
Hey boys and girls, we are going to talk about S&W shooters and prospectors. What is S&W shooters and prospectors?
We at S&W Shooters and Prospectors help people find treasure.
Did you say treasure?
Yes, treasure. Just listen to this amazing review from our happy customer, Jackie Sparrow.
Chocolate ship-shape and a pleasure to deal with. I was able to buy everything that I needed at prices that were shillings less than others. I found my 9 pieces of 8 in no time. Savvy?
I know you're asking yourself, why should I shop at S&W Shooter and Prospectors?
Chuck Smalley has over 45 years of metal detecting experience. He works with each customer one-on-one to customize their setup to match their skill level.
So if you always dreamt of being a pirate, contact Chuck at S&W Shooters and Prospectors and he'll take a great deal for you.
Eye patch and rum not included.
Caution. Please do not operate motor vehicles or power equipment while under the influence of this show. Listening to this show could cause side effects such as bouts of laughter, violent binges of cabin fever, and even dreams of silver and gold. Please be advised. Now that the fine print is out of the way, on with the show. All right, the fine print's out of the way. It's on with the show. We're back. We're live once again. You are listening to Beyond Sight and Sound, metal detecting and treasure hunting radio for all the really cool digging people out there. And as I look into the chat, I see that Chuck's in, the man with the plan, the dealer of choice here. Scott, Barb, Tam, we've got Steves and Bills and Nelson and good grief. Where is everyone coming from? I don't know. You'd act like we haven't been around lately or something. No, we've been around. I've seen, even though the last 2 episodes have been archives back to back, I have seen that there have been people in the chat. There have been people hitting the archives. I know. Some of them don't like the archives near as much as the live run. But sometimes it can't be helped, and there were a lot of things going on last week that we had to kind of prepare for, and part of that included disassembly of the studio in preparation of things, and trying to get it back together in time for tonight's show. That's just the way it goes. I mean, it happens sometimes. Welcome to Phil. Obviously, the gang over at DA, for those that were following Steve's Go Live last night, they were having a great time out at the campground. They were going down, getting the campers ready, I guess, because I had tried to contact Frank yesterday, and then realized last night that, oh, wait a minute, Tam had even brought it to my attention that they may be on vacation for the weekend or whatever, and it's like, well, I wasn't going to bother him too much or anything. I just had a quick question for him, but since it looks like he is on vacation, I will not bother him and let him enjoy his time with Steve and Ronnie, which Frank did get back to me today, and we got all that taken care of. Very, very cool of Frank to get back to me on that. And it looks like, from what I heard from Frank, Steve and Ronnie hit the beach today. Tried to get some detecting time in. I don't think, unless Steve or Ronnie's hiding something, I don't think there was anything to write home about. Frank didn't really mention anything particular. But hey, sometimes it's still nice to just get out. So, glad to hear that they were able to get out a little bit. I see Tam in the chat going on about the girls. Yeah, Frank had a tough weekend, huh? Well, he sounded like he was doing pretty good when I spoke to him this afternoon. And it looks like everybody was having a great time. And that's the important part sometimes. It's not necessarily if finds are being made or if good finds are being made. Are you having fun? Are you enjoying yourself? And from what we saw last night, which for those that missed it, you can go back and check Steve's Go Live. I can't remember right now if he was live from... Welcome to Eric. I can't remember if he was live from his page or from the Detect America Facebook group right offhand, but I was there. I did watch it. Things were a bit dark because of the time of night. I want to say this was like, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 8:30 last night, 8 o'clock, probably 8:30, somewhere around there. Either way, very cool to see. Links in the description. First and foremost, our friends over at Shooters and Prospectors. Chuck Smalley, the man with the plan, the dealer we promote here. Yeah. No. Welcome to Shannon. Five of them camping. Not sure how that would work. I'm pretty certain I would be quite probably injured, maybe even potentially maimed. Either way, I'm getting hurt. I'm sure, because I'm gonna wind up tripping and doing a face plant on something. Who knows? It's hard to say. Hard to say. Anyway, we've tried to... obviously, like I said, Shooters and Prospectors, Extreme Scoops, DETECTEES.com, TheRingFinders, Detect America Electrolysis Bootcamp videos. That will also lead you to the Detect America Facebook group. And they are live Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern over on their Facebook group. Also, Metal Detecting NYC, All Metal Militia, Detected Outdoors, Crazy Spider Adventures, Ohio Metal Detecting, all on YouTube. Nokta Makro website, Midi Horde commercial, and more. And we've actually got Fred joining in with us from Jersey. How is it going, buddy?
Hi, Josh. I just wanted to call in, brief call. Did you see the article in the New York Times today? I think it was today or this week. My friend gave it to me. It was about metal detecting, a full-page article about metal detecting.
No, I did not.
Oh, it was pretty interesting. They talked about sort of the history of metal detecting and how it got very popular during the pandemic, and they had a picture of a ring finder girl who was looked like a pinup or something. You know, she was wearing like a thing with nothing underneath. It was a very sexy looking picture of a metal detector holding her XP Deus. It was pretty interesting. If you can, I don't know how you can get it. I don't know if you can get it on Facebook or something, but it's a New York Times article about metal detecting. I don't know if I can give you any more information than that, but it has. I have to look at the date when I get back to my house. But,
well, that's enough information. I'm sure we can track it down if it's available online.
Yeah. Well, they said that the first metal detector was invented to find a bullet in a president that was assassinated.
Yeah, Garfield.
I'm not sure which president it was.
Garfield, that was invented by Thomas Edison. And the only reason why that failed is because he didn't take into account the bed springs.
Oh, really?
That metal detector, right, they did not have discrimination at that point, and that metal detector most likely would have worked, but because of the bed springs, they were unable to locate the bullet. But that was the first metal detector, yes.
Well, that was it's a very interesting article. I mean, it's a full page. They talk about the ring finders. They talk about, the whole theory of ring finders. I actually went on a ring hunt this week. I had to drive, an hour and a half to get there, and I searched for 2.5 hours, never found the ring, and I get back, and the woman calls me and says the husband found it in his car. So
right,
it
does happen like that sometimes. It really does.
Yeah.
That's a lot of times when when people call me about lost items. Well, even this afternoon, in fact, I got contacted for a set of lost keys that were. A woman was out on the beach.
You're on a key.
Yeah, they were out on the beach enjoying the day, had their kids out there and everything, and the kids were looking for something to do. They were getting a little bored, and they eventually got some toys out for the kids to play with in the sand. But at some point,
oh boy,
somebody decides that they should go back to the vehicle for something, and they realize that they don't have their keys on them anymore, and that's when one of the little boys says, "Oh, but I buried them out there on the beach."
Oh, nice. That's a good kid. That time he rings down his neck.
Yeah, so we had to run out and find them real quick. And that's the first thing I asked her. I said, oh, yeah, it only took just a few minutes. But that's the first thing I asked her. You're sure you had them on you after you parked and you were out here on the beach? They're not in the car. No, we looked there. They're out here. Our son even told us he buried them out here.
Oh,
okay.
Boy. Yeah, well, I guess it's, I tried to qualify the call, and he lost them and he blah, blah, blah. And I searched high and wide for those things, and I said, man, I'm either losing it or these things aren't here, because
right.
They should show up.
Yeah, sometimes you have to kind of, it's kind of a sense of closure, so to speak, because you didn't necessarily fail, but you were able to rule that area out. Where,
that's
like,
what I told her. I said,
if I get a call,
so.
Yeah, if I get a call, there are times where I'll go out and they say it has to be somewhere around here. And I'll search for a while. Good example is the keys 2 weeks ago. I had searched in the area for a while, and it's like, okay, this is what I can say. I'm not saying they're not out here somewhere on 3.5 acres, but they're not where he thinks they are.
You've lost them.
They're somewhere else. We need to regroup and spread out, hit another area, and luckily they were recovered. We were able to find them. Actually, the 9-year-old
nephew found them or something by you found them by an eyeball sight, right?
Right. Yeah. Line of sight find.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great if you can do that. But yeah, so I didn't find it, and I would tell people to just cover my fuel costs, and I would say she gave me like $25 to cover my fuel costs, and I had to go over to Tappan Bridge, so that's like I don't know how many dollars that is now, but it was a bit annoying that I went to the whole. It took me like a good chunk of my day, my whole afternoon actually. But I try to help people, and she was very, grateful because I helped eliminate the lawn as a place for him to look. So that's why he searched his car thoroughly, and he found it in the car. So
exactly,
so that's great. I just want to tell you about that article because New York Times has pretty good exposure for the hobby, and of course they tried to make it sort of like a sexy picture of metal detectors,
Yeah,
well, not bad looking girl.
Unfortunately, we don't. Unfortunately, we all don't look that good. We're not that photogenic.
No, we're not gonna be pinups on any of us. We'll have to make a calendar. That's what we have to do, like the firemen did. Their shirts off and stuff. Holding our metal detector. All buff.
Yeah.
Get Barbara's bikini.
I guess they just have to use the cover art for the show for my photo.
Yeah, you're looking pretty good in the last pictures I've seen of you. With your shades, you got those brownish, reddish shades. Nice.
Well, yeah,
handsome man.
Kind of a signature trademark. You'll notice scrolling through my photos, there are very rare occasions that I don't actually have sunglasses on.
Yeah, well, with your condition and everything, I can understand that. But
right,
I just thought you might, I don't know if you have a certain topic for your show tonight or anything. I just happened to be out and I realized what time it was, so I figured I'd call. I don't want to take too long of your time, but anybody that's out there, I don't read the New York Times. It's a little too liberal for my tastes. But the fact that they had that article, makes them a little more reasonable in my mind. I can't read anything else in that paper. It's good for like putting in a bird cage, maybe, But that, or maybe wrapping dead fish. I'm not sure. But that's my own political angle on the story. But that article was very interesting. I got a kick out of it. So if you drag that up, check it out, and you'll find it very interesting that. Chris Turner got some good publicity in there. They put his website in there and everything. So,
right.
She said he was a professional soccer player or something. I don't know. We have a little history about him. But
yes, actually, Chris used to play pro soccer.
Wow, that's amazing.
See, the things you learn something new every day.
Yeah, they said with the help of an angel investor, he started the RingFinders. I don't know what that's all about either, but yeah, it's an interesting story. So you find it had
kind of a brief backstory there. If you go back in the archives and find the show with Chris Turner, he actually explains all of that there. And basically, what had started RingFinders was he had been out on a beach detecting, out on the West Coast, if I remember right. And somebody had lost their ring and asked him if he could possibly come and locate it, and which he did. And they tried to shove an amount of money into his hand, and they wouldn't take no for an answer. And eventually, this angel investor is an unnamed gentleman here in the U.S. that had contacted Chris and said, I like what you're doing. You should set up a directory. I will help you get it started because I like what you're doing. I have confidence in what you're doing and believe that what you're doing is a good thing. And next thing you know, the website was spawned, and many of us started coming on to the directory. Right. And some of us have been there for quite some time.
I've been in it like 5 years, and I enjoy it. It's nothing more satisfying than finding somebody's lost ring for them. So it makes the
lost
sport,
lost item. Period. I mean, because we're not necessarily always called for the precious items. Sometimes it's a set of keys. Sometimes it's property markers. You just never know.
Cell phones, like I was doing a couple weeks ago when I was looking for cell phones in the Hudson River.
Exactly.
That was a killer. But I've had some, strange calls lately, but I haven't recovered a ring in a while. But hey, you got to keep going out and trying and do your best. But so I'm glad you were able to find those keys for that person. That's feather in your cap.
Yeah, that was.
They were happy.
Oh yeah, they were happy. That was probably a $250 key. I mean, because it's one of those styles that the fob's built into the key.
Right.
So,
the keys are getting so expensive now. They do everything,
Yeah.
They use the windows in the car. They set the alarm. So if you lose your key now, it's a little different than losing the key to your '65 Chevy.
Yeah, exactly. The way technology is gone. I mean, some of these vehicles even have smartphone apps now where you can make the car park itself. Just through the smartphone.
I'll never stop learning how to do that. Wow, that's amazing. Well, yeah, pretty soon they'll be driving themselves, right?
Right.
Right into a telephone pole.
Yeah.
Like those two guys in the Tesla. Yeah.
Right. Well, you just never know.
I don't think I'd trust that. I don't think I would trust that. I mean, I'm too old-fashioned. But, all right, well, I'll let you get on with your show. I just wanted to give you that little footnote about that article. I don't know if anybody else mentioned it, but it's pretty interesting. I saw my friend today, and he handed me that article, and I was like, wow, that's cool. So let me see. I'm going to go in the house. I just walked the dog. I'm going to go in the house, and I'll tell you the date on the article so you have something else to zero in on. But it's good press for the hobby, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it actually, some people out there who may not realize the history of metal detecting or RingFinders, it educates them a little bit too.
I'm telling Josh about it. So let me see what the date is. It says Thursday, June 3rd is when it was in the New York Times.
Ah, nice.
And it has this girl, Nicolene Bohr, B-O-H-R. Remember, that's her name. She's a RingFinder. I guess she's on his, on the RingFinders list.
Right, but, and the article is actually, the link for the article is actually posted over on the Detect America Facebook group I see in the chat right now.
Oh, you got the link for it? Okay, yeah, check it out. You'll find it very interesting. It's called Introducing the New Metal Detectors. It says people are going to be losing their rings on purpose to have this girl look for them. So those old treasure hunting devices are back and out sweeping the country again.
I don't know. Metal detectorists have a different mindset. I mean, you can go driving down a street, and you know if you're with a fellow detectorist when there's some woman walking down the walk, and they look over and go, "Wow, did you see that?" And you're like, "Yeah, that's a nice old foundation." Just think of the coins that are under that sidewalk or something like that.
Yeah, it's a whole different perspective on reality, right?
Right.
You're seeing it from a whole different angle. But I just thought I'd tune you into that article. Somebody put the link in there. That's good. But so you have a good show. What you have a particular theme tonight's show, or are you just going to talk about various things?
Line of sight finds and another return.
Oh, okay. Well, that's line of sight finds. I can't say I have too many of those. The best thing I ever found line of sight like that was a $20 bill on the beach up in the snow fence.
Hey, you can't beat that. I mean, it's certainly nothing to complain about.
Down the ground.
$20 is $20.
20, I'll take that any day.
Yeah.
But as far as other line of sight things, most of the things I find with the metal detector, but we have our metal detecting club at the finds in a month. We have an eyeball category, things that people just eyeball and find.
Nice.
Walking in a parking lot and they find a ring, or so it covers a wide range of different things. Some it gets stretched a little bit. There was one guy we have in our club loves to drive around on junk night and get things, and he always has interesting things.
Hey, that works too.
Eyeball. I guess they put that in the eyeball find category. He finds he'll find an old jewelry box with gold rings in it and other jewelry that people throw on the curb. It's amazing what they throw out.
Right.
Here we're in the suburbia. So he finds some really valuable stuff. He came in one month with an embalming machine.
Wow.
Somebody put on the curb.
Wow.
There's a whole kit that you can embalm your own body, So we find some really unusual stuff. They came in with a full skeleton. Some doctor or something must have died, and they took his skeleton from his closet, put it out on the curb,
You just never know where they're going to turn up.
Yeah, that category covers a wide range of things. I'm sure you'll hear some interesting stories from people.
Well,
so
maybe
somebody else will call in with their
we've actually
surface time.
We've actually got Chuck on with us too, I believe now.
How's it going, Josh? Yeah. Brad, what's up?
Yeah.
How's it going, Chuck?
I'm sure
I was impressed that you saw that gal had a detector.
See, that's enough to. Oh, you saw that article. She's a hottie, She's not holding that Deus over her. She's got a Deus over her head, and she's trying to look hot as she can, But,
I think Chuck may have ran into her on a beach a number of years ago.
Yes, I did. She leaned over, right over my shoulder.
Really?
Right.
Well,
that'll stop you right in your tracks.
Yeah. Yep. What do you think about us making that calendar, Chuck? All us detectors with their shirts off, looking all buffed out, like they do with the firemen.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen those calendars.
Yep.
I have to get. What's your friend that's out a little west of you there, Josh? The real tall guy. I haven't heard of him on your show lately.
Real tall guy.
I'm trying to think of his name.
Out west of me?
What's his name? Yeah. Maybe he's in Illinois or something.
Jesse Pritchard?
Real tall guy.
That's got to be Jesse Pritchard.
Jesse Pritchard?
Get Jesse with his shirt off out there in that calendar, yeah. He's a big guy.
He is a big guy.
He's tall. Big guy. His nickname is Sasquatch.
Get Leighton on there.
Right.
Get Barb in
the metal detecting world has grown in the past 18 months
exponentially.
It's just blown up.
Yeah, that's what that article talks about. They talk about, it went 18% one year and then it went 22% this year. They said that the COVID thing really kick-started people's interest in doing it because they
It
do it
did.
on their own.
It did, because it's a great
talking about that
social
Rhode Island
distancing
project,
hobby.
And people found out they could get out. They don't have to be in a group. They can go out in grandma's front yard or down to a park or out to a farm field, and they can be out there and distance and
go in the woods.
That they're spending out in the field is good for them, and they pay back a little.
Right.
Yeah,
Maybe they find a
I
little
detected
something.
right through the whole thing. You know, I was out in the woods all the time and detecting, and I wasn't like holed up in my house. You know, I don't think you're going to get COVID walking around the woods. Nobody's out there.
Well, we'll hope not.
Well, that's all right. Our president tells us now we can go outside without having to wear a mask.
Well, I'm glad the president.
Right.
I'm glad the president allows me to do that.
Finally, he caught on to that.
Hey, so out of touch, we won't even go there.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I'm going to wait for him to give me an okay for a 4th of July party. That's for sure. But,
Yeah. Don't hold your breath.
Nah, I don't wait for that to happen around here. But so you have a particular eyeball sign that you hold in your memory well, there, Chuck?
Chuck's got a few.
Yeah.
I think that woman on the beach was one of them.
Yeah. I had a gal in Cancun come over and decided to lean over and talk to me. I was down digging.
All right.
All I had was a hand screw.
Yeah.
And she said, "What are you doing? What are you looking for?" And I turned around. She was topless, leaned over my shoulder, and that put me into a kind of a speechless freeze.
Boy, that's a bit distracting.
It was line of sight.
It was interesting.
But I'm sure
you
didn't take that line of sight home, though.
No. The wife was along. That was not allowed.
Okay.
No. Jeez, my wife came down.
Yeah.
How long after that happened? This gal was over laying on a beach thing there, and she still goes, "Why is your face all red?" I said, "I got a story for you." And I was pointing where she was at, and I told her the story, and she started laughing. She said, "What'd you say?" I said, "I was speechless." She said, "That does never happen."
Right. What did you say? Not a thing.
He's like Ralph Cramden going, humana, 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 humana. So,
I mean,
boy.
And
that's a great story, though. But
if she walked up to me today and said, "You remember me?" I wouldn't recognize her face anyway.
Well, you weren't looking at her face. So, all right, well, yeah. I don't know.
And yes, I've had some line of sight finds. This past week I've been working tear outs in the town to the south of us. And Josh and I were talking.
Sidewalk tear outs?
Yeah, road expansion project.
Oh, that would sound great. I would love to be on something like that.
Tearing sidewalks up
points?
and retaining walls where the highway had went through back in the 20s. And they were actually going back to their true offset. They're kind of widening the road and the sidewalks, and there's people that aren't very happy because these homes are, well, some of them date back in around 1858, and they've got rock walls up that were put up before the road come in, and we're still there, and they're going to start those down and that kind of stuff. But I had one occur yesterday where I had been working up and down this one site along this tear out, and I picked going, you can see them when they pull that concrete up out of the cracks and that, and the edges, they just fall over. Those guys don't look at it. They're just pulling the concrete up in slabs, and I picked up quite a few. It was mostly modern, but as I'm walking back, they dropped this wall out, and all there is dirt and clay underneath of that, and I stopped and I looked, I walked over, and there is a standing Liberty quarter right vertical in the dirt looking right at me.
Wow, that's a cool find. Did you get a date off it?
1927, this happened the other day, yeah.
Wow, Yeah, you don't find them with the date that often, so that's a great find.
No, I
He was a trip.
You should
found
tell him
2
about
spinning
the other
livers
one.
by line of sight.
Yeah, well, that's terrific. That's a great spot to be on if you can get in. When I see a sidewalk being torn out, I stop my truck and go right to it.
Yep.
The guys are putting forms in, and I'm there detecting. But
I try to
figure out
who's the straw boss there to see what their thoughts are about you detecting why they're working or near them and that kind of stuff. And they're pretty good about it around here, and they get pretty interested. Start stopping in and wanting to see what I'm finding. And
they're interested. It's a small window of opportunity, so you might as well grab it. But
this works.
Last
just
time
got going, and it's going to go most of the summer up there. They've got a mile plus of sidewalks and fronts. The only sad thing is the town up here, that whole drive is gorgeous in the fall. These big oaks and maples, and they're taking out 39 of those big trees to widen this road.
Oh man, yeah, that's a shame when they taking out mature trees and those old rock walls. That's some of the ancient stuff that's been there forever. So, but I guess that's progress, right? You just gotta work your way in there.
Urban sprawl coming in, and progress, and need for wider, faster roads, and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So that's happening. But I've knocked on doors down there, some places I've never asked before. I've asked, and I said, "You're going to lose this part." Yeah, go for it. Let's see what's out there. So I've been mornings. It's early like this. I've been going down there and hitting a few things. I've gotten a fair amount of arbors and some standing liberties, barber quarters, Indian heads, and made a mess out of my. So I took the truck in and found an Indian head in 1910 or 11. I think it was a 10 wheat penny under my seat. So I was having to refine things I dropped in the truck.
Well, you finding them twice then. So
finding them twice.
Sounds like a great place to be on. So So I'm gonna have to pitch off. We're having a late dinner. I got home late, but it was good talking to you guys, and have a great show.
Good hearing from you, Fred. Always.
I look forward to seeing you guys again. I'm going to be retiring this year, so I'll have a chance to travel out your way. I'll have to take my truck.
I would gladly have you out here with us.
Yeah, it'd be fun. A whole different area to detect in, different terrain and everything. I was amazed when I went out to see Josh out there, how flat it was out there in his area of Ohio.
Disneyland
like
for
cows. It's just like as far as you can see, just a flat area. It's something. New Jersey, no matter where you go in New Jersey, just about there's hills, unless you're by the ocean.
Oh, now you can still ski for a long ways out here. Give it another 3-4 weeks, and then it's corn.
Right.
For miles.
Yeah. Miles and miles of corn. Yeah, I took my motorcycle and drove to Colorado through right across Nebraska and stuff, and there was nothing but corn the whole way. I couldn't believe that. Years ago I did that. But we got, taking Route. I think we took Route 80 out and we came back on 70, and it was amazing. But it's a big country when you go across on a motorcycle. That's for sure.
Yes, it is.
I got home and I sold my motorcycle. That was the end of it. It was the last one I had. I burned myself out on it. So I don't want to do that again. Yeah, I mean, people say to me, "Why do you get a motorcycle?" Yeah, it's a little too much, especially if you're on the interstates. It's just a little boring, like a mile after mile, like a mile. But people love it. So
what you got to do is cruise out to Illinois, grab Route 66, and take Route 66 right on down to Arizona.
Is that where it starts? Okay.
It starts in Illinois. 66 starts in Chicago, or it starts in Arizona, whichever end that you're on. And you follow Route 66 all the way down into Arizona.
Yeah, I was cruising in my
interesting
my
stuff along Route 66.
Yeah, that would be a good ride for me to take in my bug. I was I was cruising. I went to see some friends today in one of our local lakes about 40 miles away, and I took my old Beetle out, so that was fun. Cruising in
There
that.
you go.
But
There you go.
yeah, I'd love to drive that out there. Route 66, that'd be a great ride. Got to get there, though. It's a long way to get to Route 66.
That's right.
I don't know where. It's probably over 1,000 miles for me just to get to the start of it, right? So
Right.
that's what fun trips are. So I'm going to leave you, gentlemen. I'll let you keep your own devices on your show here. And it was great talking to you, Josh. I just want to let you know about that article. That was my main thrust here to call. But
Right.
I'm glad if I brought your attention to it. It sounds like Chuck has seen it already, so he knows what I'm talking about. But it was a good little one-page article about the hobby
Right.
from their perspective.
And I'm
talk
sure
there,
it sold plenty of papers for the New York Times, too.
Yeah, I guess. Their thing is, they got a whole nother angle to themselves, but I guess they try to diversify their coverage of all different things. So I was surprised to see that.
Right.
But, so I'm going to say good night, and I'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks for the call, Fred.
All right, Chuck. I'll see you.
Take care, my
Bye-bye.
friend.
And
Bye-bye,
we've
buddy.
got
All right.
Barb on with us too, I believe.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, Barb.
Hey, no critter talk.
You keep
know-
falling for that same trap every time, don't you, Barb?
No.
Because when I see the call come in, you're using an old group conversation, and I can't take those calls.
I'm sorry. It's Skype. It's Skype's fault. Okay, it's all Skype's fault.
Ah.
So, I found some finds. Not looking for anything. So, I went to the thrift store last week and got 19 killer frames. And I'm taking frames apart. I never look at pictures. I just don't look at them. I'm looking at the frame, looking at it every which way. Are there chips? Are there dings? What is the price? Because I need a good quality product. So I tear all these frames apart, which I hate those little metal thingies that from China, they put them in. And I'm going through all the pictures and things, and I found something for Chuck.
Uh-oh.
No, I hope you're going to like it.
Okay. What you
I
got,
was-
Barb?
I was like, that looks familiar. That looks so familiar. And then I turn it over and it says View of the West Front of Monticello by Jane Braddock Petticolas. And it's a
Really?
reproduction of her watercolor that she did in 1825 of Monticello.
Wow.
Yeah, it says during the late 18th and early 19th centuries, landscape painting was emerging as a significant art form in America. At a time when much of America was wilderness, most artists portrayed scenes of cultivated land. Landscape painters often stressed human control of natural elements in their depictions of the early republic. This reproduction of Jane's View of the West Front of Monticello, painted in a watercolor around 1825, reflects this trend. Her pastoral scene shows three of Thomas Jefferson's grandchildren. George Wythe Randolph rolls the hoop while his sisters Mary and Cornelia stroll nearby. As one of the few depictions of Jefferson's home painted in his lifetime, the View of the West Front is an important record of Monticello's appearance during the early 19th century. The portrait also attests to Jefferson's interest in gardening, which he once claimed has always been my passion. And it was reproduced in 1995 by the Thomas Jefferson Memorial Foundation.
That's cool.
So I can't think of anyone better that would appreciate it. It has no frame. I'm going to make sure there's cardboard in the envelope so it don't get bent. and I will
Okay.
ship that off to you. And it's you can tell it's 1800s. You can just tell.
That's slick. I like that. You know, you get to study some of the early architecture because of what you're looking for when you want to go detect. You want to be able to pick out some of the homes and sites that aren't necessarily historic in nature by somebody who was there, but historic in nature as a home or building that tells its age. And those are the type of sites that you look for. And, you know, whether it's federal period or pre-federal period or Victorian and this kind of stuff, it tells you a lot about the area that you're in. If you can, you know, line of sight on that is another thing. You're looking hard for those type of homes, and doing the door knock, hopefully you'll get on.
Exactly. But when I took it out, I just kind of looked at it and went, that's cool. But I always look at the back, because a couple weeks ago I was like, this is a really nice picture, but you know, I need the frame. And then I took apart another one and went, this is cool. And before I throw anything away, I always flip them over because the good stuff's on the back. And the other two I found were Thomas Kincaid's. So,
oh, really? He's a selected artist.
Well, look at you go.
Yeah.
Well, I bought one of his pictures off of Marketplace here, off of, I think it was the Macon yard sale, which is the next county over. And I just happened to log on there like at 11:30, and she had just posted it. And it's a gorgeous Thomas Kincaid framed. It's probably 18 by 15, and she wanted $20. I was like, I'll take it right now. And met her the next day. I'm like, are you sure you don't want more for this? And I Googled it, and it's over $200.
Wow.
Yeah, so I do have two Thomas Kincaid, and I have a friend that wants one. He can frame it himself. So yeah, it's fun. And
framing has just skyrocketed along with everything else over the past few years. And if you can get and repurpose some old frames, but when you tear them apart, there's been some things found behind other paintings that have been phenomenal in the past few years. And
and that's why I look at everything, because some of these pictures I'm taking apart have 3-4 pictures in them. And so I go through each one, I look at them. I have...
Yeah, of course.
I have another one that I'm taking home from my brother-in-law, and it's got her signature on it, but it's like a 3D paper cut. It's a lighthouse, but it's 3-dimensional because it's layer on layer on layer. And, you know, he worked for NOAA for years. I'm like, okay, he gets that one. But I never look at the pictures. So when I took them apart, I'm like, oh, my God, that's a Thomas Kincaid. Oh, my God, this is Monticello, and it's a reprint. And so you get that one.
Nice.
Thank you.
Very cool.
So you never know what you're going to... You look in the frame and you go, I'm looking just for the frame because that's what makes my art. But, you know, it's all hidden. You know, it isn't on the back of the frame saying, hey, there's a Thomas Kincaid in here, you know, or, you know, this is Monticello. It isn't till you tear it all apart that it's like these people had no clue what they were getting rid of.
Wow.
Right.
And, you know, that's just as much line of sight as when you're out detecting. I mean, literally, you're going to these places, you're eyeballing stuff, you pick it up for a song sometimes, and you get something real good. And you know, I kind of watch Antique Roadshow, and I watch Pawn Stars, and I follow some other stuff. And American Pickers, they're just down the road here, 15 miles from me. And the stuff that they go find and things like that, and you keep your eyes open. We had a rather large old barn that the farmer contacted the department, this is years back, to burn, for a practice burn, and we'd take them for burns. But this one, when we got in there, we actually said, maybe you ought to just take this down, the barn board. And he said, well, I've got some people picking up, taking some of the barn board. But the beams, the solid walnut beams in this thing were huge. And I went down there and I talked to him. He says, go ahead and take a look. And went in there and looked at it. And the cornerstone of that barn was 1856, I believe it was. And I said, those beams, that walnut, they're 12 by 12s. And there's bigger ones up on that second level. This thing was huge. But it was getting kind of weak in places. And as I went through it, I went up to the hayloft area and went back in the corner. I saw something kind of white in color back in the corner down in there. And I went back to it and I pulled a crock up out of this, and it's a 2-gallon with the lid intact and the faucet and all it said in the cobalt on the side. It had a nice design on it, and it said cold drink. And I kept it. He told me, anything left in there, get it out of there, keep it. I don't care. I've went through it. And I took 2 trips because that lid, and I have it downstairs here, that lid was fully intact. And I took it and showed it to a guy in Albany that owns a big antique site. And he looked at it. He said, the value of that entire unit is that lid. There's not a chip. There's not a crack. He said, that unit's good. He said, except the rubberized or whatever they used at that time for a gasket on the little push-button faucet. And he put it around turn of the century, 1900. That was all dried up, but I've still got it down there. I was afraid to try and take it apart. I didn't even want to chip it. I didn't want to have a problem with it. And on the way up and down the ladder, not steps, ladder, I'm looking at, and there were some cans and different things sitting on this one beam, and I saw what looked like maybe a coin there, and I went down, I went back up, so I reached over and got it, and it's a 1917 Type 1 S in a Liberty quarter. It was all covered in dust. You could just see it. And I picked it up, and I still have that coin. I took it down, and it's toned. It's got purples and golds and stuff from just sitting in there. And I took it down to a guy that owns a shop that's pretty noted in our area for having a pretty good eye, telling you what you should do with them and this kind of stuff. And he said, send that in. He said, that may go as high as MS-63.
Wow.
And that was a line of sight find. And I was telling Josh about some of this, and this quarter the other day, just in the dirt facing out, I could see it. I could tell what it was, and I just plucked it out. Nobody bothered or anything. Where the wall had come down, it was about maybe 8 inches standing vertical, worked its way down, and it's in pretty nice shape.
Right.
That
Just a line of sight thing. I picked up several coins working up and down where they pull that sidewalk up.
Definitely.
Saw them before the detector went over it. So I'm sure there's people that have had this happen to them, either on the beach. I've heard of guys down on the Treasure Coast working along where the wave action is. Literally, they picked coins up, flipping back and forth while they're detecting in the surf.
Right.
So, you just kind of pay attention. You start getting astute to that. I found one other coin, line of sight up near a limestone kiln out here. It was just laying on the limestone. I looked at it just before I swept the detector by. I thought, well, that's a coin laying there. I figured it'd be a new penny. It wasn't. It was an 1865 Indian head.
Of course.
It's just laying on that limestone. The quarry had been put in 1850 there, and I just, at the right time, saw it before I detected it.
I actually metal detected last week for an hour at the farm, and I found a 1973 penny. I was excited.
Well, fines were made.
Yep. And so I told Josh, we'll see if anybody's got any other line of sight fines.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, though, Barb, that beats mine. I was detecting this afternoon unintentionally because got contacted about a set of keys, and the first target, somebody had buried a fork with the prongs up.
Yes, I read that.
So that was, I mean, glad that it was found so that we didn't have that issue, because somebody could have been very seriously hurt. But
we had a guy at the meeting the other night, 3 straight years now. He's been down doing volleyball courts, sand volleyball courts, and this is at Bradley University in Peoria. He has permission to hunt those. 3 straight years, he has recovered a tent stake that's been put in the ground, point up. 3 straight years. And he
that's
turned
not
them
good
into
either.
the police.
That's not good either. So, I mean, we're cleaning up the environment.
Oh, Bill Hayes says, way to go, Barb. I was being funny. I was not excited about that penny at all.
Yes, she was. She's trying to contain herself now, but she was.
Well, I've been slacking. Retirement is like busy. So I've really been slacking on Dirt Pirates. But, Bill, in case you haven't seen, you won Find of the Month. So PM me what I need, and congrats.
Well, there you go. Well, as long as that's...
if retired, Barb, officially now?
Yeah, I got fired from my job April 30th. I handed in my keys and my badge and said, thank you so much. You just made me the happiest person of my life.
Well, there you go. Well, we've got another caller in the wings, Barb.
All right. Night.
Thanks for the call. And I don't know if he's actually cooking, cleaning, or munching candy corn, but we've got Frank on.
No, I'm just... Listen, I just wanted to come on and say, congratulations, Barb. I know how excited you must be. No, honestly, I just walked out here tonight. I'm not doing nothing. I'm sitting around. I'm listening to your show. That's it. I'm not building tonight. I'm not doing anything. I'm relaxing from my
Sounds like you need that. Did you see my note to you there in the chat there? Did you eat your 10 pounds of candy corn over the weekend with the grandkids and the dogs?
No. Grandkids don't get to. They don't even get to see my candy corn.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you had to eat it just to keep the rate up that you needed.
Let me tell you what. All I can think about is going to bed tonight, man.
It's been a long weekend.
Wow. I'll tell you what.
Busy.
I had 2 granddaughters and 3 dogs with me. And, yeah, I'm tired.
Go home and
but I got a line of sight story for you, Josh.
Good.
Ooh. All right.
So, yeah, it was a good one. So let's say a few years ago, I ran a team for University of Pennsylvania in the archaeology department, and I've told this story before. We were introducing metal detecting into the archaeology department with great resistance, but we were doing it. So we had permission. It was right at the point in time when Monterey Pass National Park was waiting to get their national park status. They were acquiring property surrounding the park, and we had permission to dig a piece of property at Monterey Pass Park or adjacent to it from a farmer, owned a hillside there. And so we had a whole team. We were going to dig as much as we can. The majority of it was going to Monterey Pass Park.
Right.
So we had 30 kids. We had a whole team. We were set up there for at least a week, camping the whole 9 yards. We were going to be round the clock digging. And we get there, And they introduced me to the property owner, and we're talking, and he's a great guy. And he says, listen, if you guys get a chance, he goes, about maybe 50 yards into this woods on the side of this hill, he goes, there's a cool piece of pipe sticking out of the ground. And it looks like it's a big old bronze pipe. We thought it might have been a well. He goes, but you go over and look around, see what you think it is.
I know where this is going.
Bronze. Yeah, he said bronze. And we looked at each other. Me and the other professor looked at each other and said, let's just go take a walk out there and look at this thing.
Right, because when's the last time you've seen a bronze pipe?
Yeah. And it was absolutely about 12 inches of a cannon muzzle sticking straight up out of the ground. Oh. So basically our metal detectors never touched the ground that whole week. And we brought in 2 4-wheel drive tow trucks and slowly dug little tiny holes around the outside, poured water in it, got it sloppy, and then we pulled this thing out. And we finally got it out after about 3 days. And we took a bottle of water and poured a bottle of water across it. And Livermore Foundry was the first thing we saw. And we knew we had a Confederate cannon.
And, that is phenomenal.
And I guess it's like a 10-footer or something like that. It spent over a year in a custom-built electrolysis tank. And it now sits at the National Park.
See, now, something like that, I mean, even just sharing the story now again, if that was me, that would I would still get chills down my spine.
Wow. Then, of course, then we do the research, and they would bury the cannons in the ground upright, so it would be too much of a pain in the butt for anybody chasing them to dig up and use against them.
Right, because they didn't want them used against them.
Yeah, and then we just found caches of cannonball and mini ball lead, the strap lead for the mini ball. I mean, it was just a magnificent cache of Confederate stuff as they were running from Gettysburg, and it was amazing. Yeah, there's a big display of that there now too, and that was a killer find. That was a killer find, and it was twice as much work than if we were out there just swinging detectors.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Wow. I mean, because this is time consuming. It has to be done delicately. Wow.
Yeah, that was the tough part. Getting that thing out and not fracturing it. You don't know how weakened it is in what state. It was actually in tremendous state. Most of the hallmark was in place. The Livermore Foundry was complete. The number was complete, which was unfortunate because instead of us taking it back and starting working on it, then the ATF had to be called in. The number was in place, and it was ultimately turned back over to the college, and we cooked that sucker for a year, and that was a great electrolysis experiment. And it's actually sitting out there in Monterey Pass Park.
See, this is why you're the electrolysis guru.
That's right. No, nothing too.
Yeah, luckily, people handed me cool stuff to experiment with for the past 30 years.
Nothing too big or too small, right?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we adjust. It was a big cannon. We adjusted the voltages, but I mean, and I tell everybody, it took a long time, but the vast majority of that cannon was cooked with 12 volts of electricity.
That's cool.
Right. And that's one of those things, much like with the recovery of it, you have to kind of use some willpower and contain yourself and not get too ahead of yourself or too aggressive with it and damage it in extracting it from the ground and in cleaning it up. Yes, patience is a virtue.
Well, that's the thing. That was a great lesson. That was a great lesson for these kids that wanted to get into archaeology, especially modern archaeology. It was a great lesson because they were beside themselves with pickaxes and everything else. I mean, they just wanted to bring in the bulldozers, bring in the backhoe. It was painful to watch these kids move this thing an inch at a time to get it out of the ground.
So I got a question. Did they weigh that barrel?
It was well worth the dig.
What was that? Did they weigh it? How much did it weigh? I think they said it fired 12-pound shot. It was about 10 feet long. It may have been 12-footer. I'm not positive. You got to realize, guys, and everybody's like, "Where's the pictures?"
This was before Facebook. This was before. Listen, the phone that I carried around in my pocket flipped open. Okay, there was no cameras. I did get a couple.
That's right.
I did get a couple of pictures sent to me by the guy over at Monterey Pass. So there are pictures of the finished cannon now. There are a few pictures laying around. I'll dig up of the cannon being extracted and hauled onto a flatbed.
I'll take some pictures of my finds too. I told Josh I would. I'll get them posted up. I didn't get a chance today, but not that big, Frank. I never found one. I've never found a cannon sticking out of the ground.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely the story of the night.
But then recently, more recently, the past few years, they were doing landscaping on a VFW hall locally, and the landscaper, I guess they were putting in drainage or something, had a backhoe hooked on something and pulled 2 Revolutionary War cannons out of the ground. I think they were from Massachusetts foundry.
Wow.
2 of them. One got donated to the VFW, and the VFW said, "Take it, do whatever you want with it." And the cannon vanished, and no one knows what happened to it. And I'll go so far. I'll leave names out of this, but me and Steve were detecting one day, and the guy owns a beautiful piece of property here in South Jersey, giant house. It was an inn in the 1700s, and Steve got his permission to dig because it had a slave tunnel, and the guy wanted to know if it was intact or not. So we went out there with the radar. We actually found the remnants of the tunnel. And the guys, we were talking about all the stuff that we find on these colonial properties. He goes, "Oh, you want to see something?" I said, "Sure." So he takes us into his garage, and there's the cannon. He was the guy that was putting in the drainage. And there's the cannon. He's got it blocked up on 4x4s, and it's sitting in his garage right now.
Wow. That is cool.
And we had no idea. We just walked in. We're just digging the property, and the guy's like, "Yeah, let me show you something." And I said, "Tell me you found that at a VFW hall." He goes, "Yep," because we're putting it in the drainage.
Right. Going, how did you know that?
Yeah. So yeah,
wow.
so every now and then your line of sight will take you someplace, bro. I'll tell you what.
Yes, it will.
Yeah, you just never know what it's going to be, when or where it's going to show up. You just got to be prepared when it happens.
Strike up those conversations, man. Don't be afraid. Strike up those conversations. Get into people's heads and let them talk to you about this stuff.
They love to tell you their side of it, their stories, what they've seen, what they may have, or what they can help you find.
And I tell everybody, don't get caught up, especially in this hobby. Don't get caught up in your politics, because guess what? Your favorite liberal your least favorite liberal might have a piece of property you can dig.
That's right.
That's right. Could be your new best friend
when you're trying to make headway in this hobby.
Absolutely.
Yep. So anyway, the cannon again. Now you said it went where for display, Frank?
Monterey Pass.
We took it for about a year at the University of Pennsylvania. We cooked it. We stabilized the metal. We got it down to basically as smooth as we could. And then they had an armor specialist come in and do the aesthetics on it. So they actually have a resin that they'll use to patch divots and stuff that you can't tell is not metal anymore. And then it was painted the way that they paint the cannons, and it's on display at Monterey Pass.
That is cool.
Really?
Yeah, that was a cool find. That was a good day.
Yeah. Absolutely it would be. That is phenomenal.
And then they got about 100 cannonballs. They got probably about 1,000 mini ball, mostly round ball because it was Confederate, and then a bunch of the strap lead that they would cut up and use for they were just dumping weight. As they were running from Gettysburg, they were dumping weight, anything they could dump to get away faster. And,
right.
We found a dump site, basically.
Well, that's a heck of one to find.
Yeah, it kind of took us by surprise. We were expecting a weekend of buttons, And yeah,
plans changed quite quickly. Plans
very
changed
quickly.
quite quickly. That is awesome. I mean,
And
I've
trying to find 4-wheel drive tow trucks that can make it up into this little section of hill. That was a treat too. But those guys were good, man. They got up there. We ran about 50, 60 feet of cable, and they just stood there for a couple of days, and an inch at a time we pulled this thing out, saturating the ground, breaking little air bubble pockets, and then pulling it out an inch at a time.
Wow. Now, what do you think when you were recovering that? What do you think the overall weight of that cannon was?
It had to be. I mean, you're talking well over 1,500 pounds, if not a ton or more. Had to be in that vicinity. It was girthy, it was solid, and it was heavy. I mean, I know the pickup truck handled it fine because they can handle that kind of weight, but you could see that they were picking up weight with that thing, and I'm sure it was all weight because they classified it now and the whole 9 yards. I wasn't necessarily privy to that part of the project, but it had to be at least 2,000 pounds.
But you could definitely tell when they were winching that out of the ground, there was some tension on that cable.
Yeah, even when we were lightweight winching it. In other words, we weren't putting all the force behind it because we didn't want to snap the shaft or break off any of the details of it. But you could tell that it wanted back in the ground almost more than the truck wanted it out of the ground. So there was definitely some weight behind it, and the majority of that weight was definitely at the breech and in the back. So it was a heavy cannon.
And it definitely would have taken some time. I mean, I'd have been absolutely devastated if that thing had cracked or something trying to get it out of the ground.
That's the thing. Because, listen, the college could have easily turned this over to a full-blown archaeology team, and they'd still be digging it out of the ground today. We know that.
Right.
But they were good enough to, we provided them with our course of action, and they said, yeah, go for it. Let's see what happens. So we were extra careful. Could it have come out of the ground faster? Probably in hindsight, because we know what kind of shape it was in. But that was hindsight.
Right.
The last thing we'd ever want to do is break off anything off of that thing coming out of the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have definitely got to take your time, and obviously you guys did it the right way. I mean, it came out intact. That's the important part. It was able to be preserved and conserved, so that is definitely very cool, and now it's on display for everyone to enjoy.
There was one other find at this site that it still has me a little kind of questioning stuff, because there was a sword pulled that was from the Augusta Machine Works. And those of you who follow that stuff knows that that's extraordinarily rare.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that apparently a lot of the Augusta Machine Works stuff was really crappily made. It wasn't necessarily good, but it's extraordinarily rare. And we don't know what happened to it. It was turned over to proper authorities. But we don't. To this day, I've never heard anything of this sort again. That was a little off-putting, but
funny how that happens sometimes.
I'd like to believe it's sitting in a room somewhere in Pensy, but I have a feeling it's sitting over someone's fireplace.
Right. Unfortunately, there's a very good possibility of that.
Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a shame, but that's something that I would like to have seen on display, just because of the rarity of a AMW sword.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to agree. I would definitely have to agree. But man, that is phenomenal.
Yeah, it was a time capsule of 1863 stuff there, man.
Now, was that, in your thinking, just a small leftover, they had to dump it to keep on the run type situation, or was there a larger encampment around it?
No, they because the cannon was buried vertically, they believe it was on the run. They buried it vertically to make it more difficult for the Union soldiers to ever dig them out and use the armor against them. But the general consensus is through those trails and through those hills are probably dozens more sites like that. And they are now part of National Park Service, so they will pretty much be there until the end of time.
Wow.
Yep. Because they were dumping wagons, they were dumping cannons, they were dumping whatever they could. At that point in time, when they were running from Gettysburg, they were not only trying to get away, but they had the only supplies they had was armor. They had guns, they had cannons, they had wagons coming out their ears, and they didn't have food.
Right.
So at this point, it was getting out fast, getting out quickly, getting out alive, praying that the Union soldiers weren't going to turn around and chase them, which they didn't. So it was pretty much just dumping the load along the way. And who knows out in those mountains, in those hills, how many more sites like this are laying out there.
Yeah, and you figure the cannons would have been some of the first things to go just because of the sheer weight. It's slowing them down.
Yeah. The property owner said that over the years they have, through the farm fields and stuff in that area, they pulled a bunch of those wagon wheel yokes, just yokes. So we know that they dump wagons. They had guys coming back seasoned wagons and they had no use for them.
Right.
What did Lee say to his man? These things are a hindrance to me now, not a help.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, I mean, when you're trying to get away as fast as you can, and you can't have anything like that slowing you down, especially not in that particular scenario.
No, exactly. That's what we've always talked about for years and years and years, a national permit, a federal permit to let guys that know what they're doing, guys that can pass a test, go into some of these areas and dig up some of this lost history that they know is there, but will probably never, ever be recovered just because of its national park status.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the unfortunate thing about it, because if they would implement a program like that, I mean, we think every year we're like, wow, are you seeing the things that are being recovered? Just think of what would be recovered then.
Yep. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I found a Confederate canteen out at Montpelier, and the Matt come up. He says, "I know what this is. This is a canteen, but I don't think we can get it out of the ground and conserve it." We opened up around it, and they reburied it.
Right.
And I get their philosophy,
yeah,
but I don't agree with their philosophy. I mean, there's so many people up there that say this stuff needs to be left in the ground, but this is stuff that was made by man to be used by men. What story is it telling being lost forever?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, I understand the concept.
It had you could see it was like wood strap with I don't know, it was pure or tin, Frank. I mean, we cleaned and worked around it, and they just come up, and the archaeologists looked at it, and they took a couple pictures, and they reburied it because they said it's probably too fragile. We want it left there, but it wasn't really looked at to see if there'd been any name carved in it or anything like that that would have added to that history. They just, I could walk you to that spot today out there. I could take you right to it and where it lays, but they left it.
Right. And I get it. I understand the concept behind their logic, but at the same time, it's like, we've got to find a better way. We've got to find a better solution if we can.
There's a poor sense of responsibility when it comes to some of this stuff. All the way to this, there's still bodies buried in Gettysburg. There's still unmarked graves in Gettysburg that are not found, and they're not found because nobody's looking, because they feel that it would do an injustice to dig these bodies up now. And I don't get that. Why should any soldier from any army ever be left to rot away in an unmarked grave without any of the honor and that we give our soldiers today. Why does it make sense to leave them there?
Yeah, exactly. Some people, it's all about perspective. I mean, some people look at it like it would be an injustice to dig them up, but as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of an injustice not to, and give
absolutely.
them the proper burial and the proper recognition for the sacrifice that they made.
And they make the argument. Well, you know what it would take to find. Well, listen, we know where these guys fought, and we know that a half a dozen ground penetrating radar units would find probably the vast majority of them. But again, it's another out of sight, out of mind. Let it lie. The peaceful pictures overlooking the battlefield is all wonderful, but in the meantime, you got soldiers that are there with no burial, with no names on their headstones, with no headstones, and that's just it's a shame, because what we can accomplish, forget what you can put in your pocket, but what you can put, what you can give to some of these families that are still alive today, that's still around today, is far and away greater than the peaceful thoughts and the peaceful pictures they put on calendars.
Yeah, even here in our area, Memorial Day weekend, they had actually brought remains home of a soldier that had fought in World War II, that he was a local. He lived in the area before he went to do his duty for the country during World War II, and they were able to recently recover his remains, and they only thought it fitting, bring him home. He needs to come home.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely.
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 I'm right there with you. I believe in that wholly, and I don't care if it was, let's go all the way back to French and Indian Wars, the Revolutionary War in the United States, the War of 1812, and go over to the foreign wars that we fought in. If they find them, reinter them properly. If you can do it, if you can do this, research them and find out who they were.
Absolutely.
And get the families involved.
Maybe you could never identify some of these guys, but you know what? You can give them the burial,
the proper recognition,
the finally pomp and circumstance that they deserve.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, you're right.
You may not. Cemeteries overseas from World War II. There's a marker and a gravesite and unknown soldier known only to God.
Yeah,
and the way they mark them.
And you may not be able to identify some of these remains. That's absolutely a possibility. But if you don't attempt to recover them and you don't attempt to try, you're guaranteed you're not going to identify any of these people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, there's plenty of organizations of people who had relatives in the Civil War that are still holding that candle today.
That's right.
Just because it was 160 years ago doesn't mean that their family wouldn't want that honor and closure to that thing. And listen, metal detectors, you trip over these things because you find relics. You find, granted, guys like, well, you can't find bodies with a metal detector. No, but you know what? You find stuff that leads you to an area that may have bodies or have important stuff buried in the ground that no one's ever going to get to see again.
People would be surprised, and I don't know. Go ahead, Chuck. Well, I don't know if Frank has heard that story or article before, but I know years ago there was a guy, I want to say out in California. He was detecting along the side of a highway, and he got a signal, nice solid signal. Everybody remembers them old Casio calculator watches, and the back plate on that watch gave off a signal that was good enough to him that he was going to dig, and he gets down and he sees a watch, and he goes to try and pluck it out of the ground when he realizes that it is attached to human remains. And at that point, you have to call the proper authorities, and they came in, they did the excavation and everything. It solved, it was like a 12 or 14 year missing persons case.
The one we found one here, Josh. We found one here It was an old site. I'll even say the name of it. It was called Menanico Sand. It's called Menanico Sand Wash today, but it was Menanico Village in the 1700s, all the way through the turn of the century, 20th century. And this ghost town that's there, this beautiful hillside rise, and there was nothing ever built on this rise. And we always went there and dug. And we always said, I wonder what that rise was for. It's almost like overlooking the town. And we had a very bad rainy season, and guys were up there with their four-wheelers, and this one guy with a giant truck literally cut a 3-foot deep trench on this hillside. Now, we always dig those trenches because, you're 2-3 feet deeper in the ground. You never know what you're going to hit. And I hit a piece of gold chain. And that gold chain led to a burial of someone who was probably something important to this town. But 150 years later, this guy is now, honored. He's got a proper burial. And this is the kind of stuff that happens out there, and I just don't get why an important site like Gettysburg or any of these battlefields where there are human beings that fought for your country, regardless of what side you're on, are still buried there, and why you will do absolutely nothing to recover them. And you're not changing the history by recovering these guys. I'm sure if they were alive today, they would rather be buried in someplace with honor as opposed to dying where they were shot. I just don't get that mentality. It always bothers me.
Yep, I have to agree. I mean, regardless of what side they served on, regardless of what their belief was, they served their country. They served a cause that they may or may not have believed in, and they deserve that honor and respect rather than to be just left wherever. Let's at least give them a proper burial, whether we can identify them 100% or not.
Absolutely. That's always been, and that is what I think a federal license should be based on. That should be the goal of guys getting a federal license. And it's been brought up and it's been talked about, and it never happened. It probably never will happen. But it's a shame. It's just one of those pet things that gets in your craw, and it just always bothers me. That there's some real talent. Listen, there's a lot of weekend warriors that swing a metal detector, and God bless them. It's about having fun.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of guys out there that spend a lot of time and are very proficient at this kind of work, and would really do some wonderful things out there on those sites.
And would very happily donate their time, equipment, expertise, if that's what the outcome was.
Absolutely.
Well, they've looked for years out in at Custer's battlefield for the mass grave, and they've never nailed that one either. And they literally, Fisher was the head of this thing. Fisher detectors went out there, and they allowed people in to look for this mass grave site. And I think it was in Treasure magazine. They actually showed one of the guys that found a dismembered finger, had his wedding band on it yet.
Oh, wow.
But that was the part. They only found bits and pieces. They never found the mass grave. And there's one out there at the Bighorn that they've looked for.
The thing is, we have cemeteries, modern cemeteries today, and I did one about 5 years ago, and I won't mention the name because it's a black mark on the cemetery. But so the cemetery had some bad. It's about a 175-year-old cemetery. They had some bad record keeping. So we went in and tried to identify grave sites that weren't marked or had lost the headstones over the years. And we uncovered about a 75-foot long by 20-foot wide trench that was full of bodies. And this is a cemetery that people know about.
Right.
It's been a cemetery, active cemetery. And what they was doing there were homes for handicapped people, and as they would die, they would basically send them off to these different cemeteries and lay them in a trench and cover them over. And it just drives me insane. And this cemetery knew of this and still was willing to take the shot that they were going to take to have people come in and mark this out so they could ultimately do something proper. with that. And we have soldiers who died for this country laying out there in the field, and somehow that's patriotic. Somehow it's patriotic to leave them in the ground.
Right, yeah. How is that okay?
Well, I was with Walt Gorham out east in Pennsylvania, and we had some permissions out there that Walt had worked and got us all on, and we went out there and we were talking. One of the, not the oldest one, but one of the oldest Lutheran churches in the area was also part of Washington's headquarters, the house next, and we got on there and we were able to detect it. In fact, I recovered my first Revolutionary War items. Across the street is a cemetery. It's closed. It's a cemetery, but it's no longer people interred in there. And we were talking that you can go detect in there. Well, we weren't interested that much in, detecting in there. But in the middle of it, there's a mound. On that mound is a large concrete slab. Then there's just a little remembrance on it. This is a tomb of unknown Revolutionary War soldiers that were brought back from the Battle of College Station.
Wow.
Washington got defeated. They then retreated to Valley Forge from there. So they brought in a group with ground penetrating radar. They thought there may be 30 or 40. They said there could be in the area right there 1,500 soldiers buried in that.
Wow.
Just
And
a big
that's the thing.
tape. And it's there. You can go look at it. It's. I mean, we went in there and we were all just astounded at that. And they had no time to give and take bodies with them. They were on the run, similar to our Confederates that you're talking about in that one battle.
Right.
These guys were getting out of Dodge because the British were marching on them, and they headed for Valley Forge. And then history after that, he crossed, but these guys, and they think it's a mixture of Brits and our American soldiers.
Right.
Sure. There's a lot of Hessian soldiers out there, and and you know what? That was that was a different time period there, because a fallen soldier in that time, his enemies may have given him a proper burial. It was just a different mentality.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
just somehow we warped it to believe that leaving an unmarked grave in the ground is patriotic, and it's wrong. It's my opinion. I've argued with guys who say it shouldn't be touched. I get it, but that's not my view. That's not how I feel about it.
And then at Mount Pillier, there are several known graves, small cemeteries from slaves and Confederates up in the hills up in there, and they've ID'd them, and they go out and literally in the winter, as you get a melt, those graves get outlined. I've seen it elsewhere too.
Sure, especially
literally,
the shallow
you can
ones.
tell a grave in that light snow as it melts, it will outline that grave.
Yep,
absolutely.
And I've seen that, and I've seen it here. A little Code Township Cemetery asked me to look for unmarked graves. I did the best I could, but I said, look, this is a metal detector. This is not a ground penetrating unit, but we knew where they were because it was the poor section.
Right, exactly. And a lot of them
wanted to see how they were laid out. We were able to ID some, and I told them, let's wait till we get a snow melt, and you could see it. He said, we never thought of looking at it that way.
Sure.
Right.
That little dusting of snow, it'll either accumulate or melt at a different rate.
Yep.
Yes,
and
does.
you'll get an outline.
Lights it up like a neon sign.
So.
All right, guys, I didn't mean to take up the rest of your show.
No,
hey,
I'm being made fun of on the chat for talking too much.
Great story.
No, that never happens, Frank. I listen to you all night. Now, if it's Pacifico, well,
He's the one making fun of me. What are you talking about?
Is he? I'm not on the computer. I'm sitting out here watching the sunset, relax, just on the phone, talking with my friends.
Well, see, but Steve was in the chat, so he heard it. It was not an electrolysis rant. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
and it's just what we're talking about, line of sight finds, looking for line of sight things. I mean, there's other things that you're not paying attention to while you're swinging that detector. You need to pay attention to.
Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Love coming on talking with you guys.
Yeah, always
thanks,
a pleasure.
Frank.
Always
Go
some
get
great
some
stories.
candy corn. You deserve it.
All right, I'm going to take a nice big handful right now.
There you go. There you go.
All right, guys. See you later.
Thanks for the call,
All
Frank.
right, later.
Wow, those were definitely some good stories.
I got no idea what time it is.
Yeah, we have run over, but man, when we've got stories and information like that going, I'm not shutting the show down.
No.
The show runs over at that point. That's just the way it is, and it looks like there's still plenty of people in the chat having fun with it too. And that's kind of part of the beauty of it. We can end it when we say it's done.
Yes, sir. You're in charge. So, but no, that's fun, and that cannon has my interest piqued because there's one missing in our area from the Civil War that went off a bridge up here, and that would be interesting to go and see if it can be recovered. At least give it a shot. And it has to be dry weather because if it's running, you can't get in there, and it is dry weather right now. We are extremely dry out here.
Right. Well, that could be another item on the to-do list for you.
Well, that's a thought, but that one was cool. That's very cool because they found a site that had a lot more than just that too. Yeah,
and I would say, I mean, you've got some great stories of line of sight finds, but a cannon, I think that one kind of takes the cake.
I haven't gotten a cannon yet, and that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool, definitely, and well worth.
You could then stabilize it.
Yep, and well worth some candy corn after all of that conversation.
There you go. Well, I'll get out of here, buddy. And,
all right.
All right. And I hope everybody has a great night. Stay safe out there for me.
That's right.
Thanks, Josh.
Hey, thanks for the call. You do the same, Chuck.
Thanks, sir. Good night, all.
And for everyone else, definitely, if you can get out there and find something, get out there and find it. I'm not sure that we had much of a spring. It seems like we've went directly into summer. The water is warming up. The beaches are getting busy. Busy, 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 busy. If you're not traditionally a beach or water hunter, you may want to think about mixing it up and trying it out this year, because I've heard what the beaches are starting to look like along the Jersey Shore. I know what our beaches normally look like around here, and Tam and I saw firsthand ourselves today that what we're normally used to seeing is not what we saw today. So, gonna be a heavy, busy beach and water season. And it should be interesting. For everyone else, though, hey, if you enjoyed the show, make sure and throw us a like. Great calls from Fred, Chuck, Frank. Excellent, excellent stories. We're gonna roll. We'll catch you on the pages.